Have you ever just seen a figure in a shop and said, I don't know who the fuck you are. However, I think you look cool, and I want you. Just not even for anything in specific, just to kind of be a cool thing in my collection, something I can use in photographs. That's the experience I had when I found the 1995 Galoob figure of the NM-E Ultra Villain from UltraForce. A comic I had no idea existed. I maybe heard the name vaguely once. However, if you don't know who they are, don't worry. I don't think many people do. It was an indie comics in the 90s, like most 90s indie comics that weren't very good and were usually superhero-based. Kind of died out. I think Marvel owns them now, but like most of those characters are dead, including NM-E. Not dead in universe, I mean just like don't exist anymore. Galoob is a company that I think could be still around. I didn't really look into them, but I know they're responsible for Micro Machines. This is the only Galoob figure of my collection, so this is I'm a Galoob virgin, having my Galoob cherry fucking plucked right now. And as I said earlier, I saw this in the shop, and I thought, it looked nice. And there's a really particular story as to how I got this. So I saw it in the shop, thought it looked nice, but I think it was Black Friday. I had other things I already had, and it was considered on the list of things that I can get later. So I told myself, next time I was in, I was going to grab it. I come in next time, not there. Not a big deal. I knew it was an obscure figure because I didn't know who it was. So I looked on eBay, I bought it for like $12, new in box, and then after it's shipping for like a day or 3, I get a message from the seller saying that, hey, I'm sorry, I'm visually impaired and I'm usually really good about this, but I sent your package to somebody else and somebody else's package to you. So I'm waiting for this. Remember, this is a Christmas present, right? I mean, to myself, but, it's for Christmas. Santa was supposed to deliver this to me, and Santa had his order mixed up. And so I get this other guy's package. It's actually some really cool, like, G2 Seeker jets. I don't think they're actually Seeker jets, like Seekers per se, but you know what I mean. And I mail that to that guy, and then this arrives, and so I have more experience to talk about it later, but first off, I want to get into some details about it. To talk about the box here for a moment. Here we have a pretty typical retro cart, nothing much going on here. There is a variant of this with a black background. That was the one I saw in the shop, but I just got the yellow one because it wasn't a big deal to me, But this is actually a pretty fun box. I like that it has this big, like, blue circle in the middle behind the figure. I like when figures do that. I know that the TMNT boxes also did something pretty similar. They had like busting through a brick wall. That was really fun. Here we have some comic art. This is basically my comparison for what it looks like in the comic. Number 7, from the hit TV show and comic book series. This is also where we get Ultra Villain as his subtitle. I don't know if that's actually a subtitle. Moving on to the back, we have some instructions for the figure, especially for their little gimmick. And here we have a little character bio. NM-E. Part man, part computer. NM-E is a biomechanical killing machine that once slaughtered the squad. Hardcase's first team, asterisk. He is completely invincible, although he can be put out of commission temporarily. So he's not completely invincible, he's just really tough. NM-E is armed with formidable, high-tech weapons and scythe-like limbs that can slash, detach, and extend. He thinks and adapts and never quits. See Hardcase comic book number 1, Ultra Editor. I don't know if I describe his limbs as scythe-esque, but, they're fun. Here we have a little bio on the UltraForce as a thing. You can read that if you want to. I just think it's funny that they mention how Ultras only are tolerant of society. Listen, guys, we're on thin fucking ice. The Ultras at any moment can decide that they're sick of us. Looking at the rest of the characters here, I'm not really impressed by most of these guys. NM-E is the only one I'm interested in. All of these kind of look like generic toy character figures. Definitely what like a 90s artist was doodling and thought would make for a good book. Prime Ultra Hero. I guess that's campy enough to where you can get that as like a parody of itself, but Topaz is some fun deco, but I've seen better monsters than Ghoul here. Getting into the figure's looks, and I'll just say right away, this figure is gorgeous looking. I was truly blown away, and I think you can see why when I saw this in the store, I almost instantly decided I wanted it. With this great silver base tone with a heavy black wash, it gives the whole figure this immaculate, dirty feel. You really feel like he's been in battle, he's been taking blows, and he's been shrugging them off. He's almost nigh invincible. But, he gets dirty every now and then. I mean, he still lives in our world. The sculpt work is incredibly detailed. You can see just all the teeth are individually sculpted so the wash can go in there. All these ridges in here. Some of these things would, typically, I feel like on a lot of figures now, we'd see these all just be painted on or printed details. So it's really refreshing to see that there was a time when sculpting was where all the details would lie. Not to necessarily take a shot at new stuff and say old stuff was always better. Not always the case. But this is one of the really cool aspects of vintage figures. You couldn't always rely on your paintwork. That was the first thing to get limited by your budget. So the sculptor kind of had to come in here and do a lot of the detail. You see a lot of that in Playmate stuff. I will note, however, that underneath his little gun hands, his hands are quite flat. This isn't very good for posing, especially when his other hands are so nice and detailed. Jesus Christ. Just look at all of the nice veinage happening here. It's kind of insane. This arm in general, all the arms. This one's a little boxier. I'm sure this is part of the design. And I'm cool with this, too. I'm not complaining that this isn't this. But I wish the hand was just posed more dynamic, because this is very boring. And just moving down the figure, you can see this skull is the only thing on the figure I believe to not be in silver. It's all just white. And it really does stick out, but it doesn't stick out too much to where it's contrasting and kind of taking away from everything here. It feels cohesive. And the black wash is really digging into these details down here. You can just see all this. Great. The thighs especially. The legs are truly a marvel. It's not often on a figure that I say the feet are probably one of the best parts of it, but just seeing how the ridges in here, that's beautiful. I almost consider becoming a foot soldier just for this, and not in the TMNT sense. And these little gun accessories are pretty cool. They're actually both uniquely sculpted, if you can see, which is really nice. It would have been so easy for them to just kind of repeat the same thing twice. But no, you see, they actually have different holes and such. And even the sides of them are uniquely sculpted. The way you can tell you have them on correctly is that this little part right here is always going to be on the outside. It's always going to be this extending reach over on the outside of his arms. Now, this is going to sound strange as something that's really, really appreciative of me. I'm really appreciative about this figure. When you aren't pressing the button, these guns are not shooting. Now, that might sound strange, but if you've owned any vintage figure where, you, as a little gun accessory, you probably can relate to the fact that your figure, despite not being touched in days, will just randomly shoot its gun, and its accessory could be potentially lost. And I have never had that. This figure will only shoot once you confidently press that button down. And to demonstrate that here, I also want to show you a little bit of what that shooting looks like, because it's not too weak either. Ooh, am I not pressing this down right? Oh. It's just fun. I'm never going to really use that. It's not a display thing, and I won't use it for photography, but it works well, and it's not going to backfire on you. So, it's just nice. I could definitely appreciate it. And I mentioned it earlier, but the sculpt is very immaculate, and these little earpieces on the art, I actually seem more like a silver, like the rest of the body, but I like that for this toy, they definitely made them black. As I said, I'm not really buying this to be the character. I'm buying this to be a cool robot that looks kind of villainous, and I think that this definitely works better than just having it be silver. However, these do feel like they're a pretty hard plastic. They have a little bit of give to them. They're softer, but I would still be careful with them. Don't lean back on the idea that they're going to bend before they break. Just definitely don't lay something heavy down this figure. Don't let it fall too much. You get the idea. And we'll get to that because we need to start talking about articulation. But before we get into articulation, we should talk a little bit about the engineering issues of this figure, because it's definitely the big asterisk when I talk about would I recommend him. Now, you might have begun to notice that this figure has more than 2 arms. In fact, has 4 of them, if you'd believe it. Now, this might strike you a little bit, because even on modern figures, it's pretty hard to give your character multiple limbs. Now, granted, that's also with more articulation, more engineering in general. Modern figures are just so much more complex than this. So you might also begin to think, well, this is also very simple, right? Just 1, 2, 3, 4 swivels. Yes? Not quite, because this figure has a very glaring flaw. When I took out this figure, and I was doing simple stuff, I was testing all the joints, I was moving all this about, I was testing all this. You might see that this seems pretty tight, right? And there was, if you might see here, a breakage in the back. Now, about a fourth of his back popped off, the plastic had cracked, and it was just gone. Now, you're going to see my video, I obviously repaired it, and I will talk about that, of course, too, but there's a few things wrong with the way this figure is just built. And firstly, it has to do with the idea of clearance. Now, we've all talked about clearance, how much room a figure has to move and such, but it's really important here. This figure does not have a massive torso, and that's surprising given how much is coming out of it. And that's the problem. The pegs inside of this just simply are too big for the body they're in. When I glued it together, it's still not even 100% flush. There's a little bit of a gap, and that just has to be there so the figure can function. And I mean, at that, this figure is made of a very dense plastic, and that gives the figure a very high quality feeling. I mean, this feels like a very solid piece, and it's really satisfying to get to move when its joints are nice and smooth. However, this means that it's going to crack before it bends, and it's going to break faster than you might want it to. It's not going to give you any warnings. And that's the usefulness in modern figures about how using, different plastics for different pieces so to maximize how durable the figure is. And this figure is almost 100%, aside from maybe these ear pieces, in that hard plastic. So that didn't help at all either. And just another small thing. I don't even know if this is necessarily just on mine. It could have been like I got QC fucked here. But the joint had a little piece of excess plastic. I didn't take any pictures, I was more focused on just fixing it. A little piece of excess plastic. It was like a little nub. It probably is from the sprue. And that definitely helped push against the back and pop it out completely. And that's just unfortunate. Its inner walls are pretty thick too. I don't think they need to be that thick. I think that this figure should have had smaller joints. It should have had a bigger back. And, I actually think that they really could just get the hard plastic to work, but those two things are the main things that need fixing. It just needs a bigger back. It needs more room to happen, because if not, that happens. And I was able to fix it pretty easy. I just glued it together. But that's always a really big worry for mine. When people ask me, should I get this? I say, yeah, but just be prepared to fix it if need be. But finally, getting the chance to talk about articulation. This guy actually has some pretty handy movement. If he was just a statue, it would have really inhibited my enjoyment of it, especially because I got it more so for just base photography features. But he's actually pretty nice and not mobile. So, of course, he has some movement at the head. It can go not all the way around. It honestly looks just about far left and right as you might want it to. But, you can get a perfect side view of the head there. Each of the arms can go up, but I don't feel comfortable setting it past this point. The upper arms, I really don't think you should be doing anything past here, or else that's probably going to start seeing breakage happening. The bottom arms, also just by virtue of the top arms, can't really go past there either. This is about as high up as these arms are going to get. But you can send them pretty much all the way back. That didn't sound good. Okay, so all the way back with an asterisk. Yeah. Those arms get the movement you need. And in a surprising move that I don't often see. I guess you see it sometimes, but I just don't see it in most of the figures I collect. He has a waist swivel. That's nice. You can get some solid movement there. It especially helps for posing. It gives some really dynamic movement here. And the legs do have their own swivel. They're on a pretty basic V-bend. So I think you can get him sitting down. That still does not sound good. I'm worried about that. It'd be really unfortunate if this figure broke while I was reviewing it. That would certainly hurt its rating. Can you get him sitting down? Theoretically, that's some resistance. I have the feeling this is about as far up as his legs are going to go. Moving them back. No, they go all the way back. So maybe it's just I was being paranoid there. But as you can see, he stands like a charm. His feet are really nicely done. They have like this A little claw on the back. That's really handy. I mean, it's hard to get this figure to not stand, you know? And now, moving into size comparisons, and just general comparisons in general, frankly. Here we have it next to your Storage Shell Playmates Michelangelo and your 1988 Michelangelo. And these are who I'm going to be pairing with them most. I think that this would look really nice as like a TMNT guy they have to fight. Maybe Shredder builds this and they have to face off against him. I personally would find myself using the Storage Shell guy most. I think just the wacky look pairs better with this. But this also works. I mean, there's no, like, point of comparison here. It's just this can fit wherever you want it to, with whoever you want it to. This is just who I'm picking. And here we have it next to your 6 and 7-inch turtles, next to the NECA Mirage 2008 Donatello and your Super 7 Donatello. It's a bit short, but once again, since you can just kind of use this as a generic robot, the scale doesn't matter. It can just be a shorter robot. It does scale pretty nice with the 2008 figures, but I think it can also just look good next to a Super 7. Maybe the wash is a little intense for them. I would definitely say it looks more in line with your 2008 guys, but do what you do. And then here we have it next to your Fury, Rage, Rave toys, turtles. Summer just came in today, so I mean, expect a review on that at some point, but this is a really fantastic pairing. I really love how they look with each other, and I think the scaling works really nice too. I mean, I do ideally picture him as being a bit taller than the turtles, even though if I can accept him being like a little more of an ankle biter. But the wash work is just so in line. The details are just really nice. I mean, obviously, these missiles aren't exactly, but yeah, what can you do? And now, here we have it next to your various Megatrons, next to your world's smallest Megatron, your G1 Megatron that I don't have the repo labels for yet, but I will at some point. And now, next to your MP36 Megatron, for some comparisons. I think I prefer him most with the MP, just because I picture the Transformers being way taller than him. This G1 comparison isn't terrible if you want him to be like way bigger, and obviously world's smallest only really works if you want him to be the giant one. Like if he's like borderline or like a city. I can picture it actually. If this was like a really, really huge, like if it was like a whole building transformed. But I mean, yeah, this isn't. You have options when it comes to if you want him to have him be next to Transformers, is what I'm saying. Expect a review on, all of these guys at some point. And now, here we have it next to some more, even dastardlier, robots from your collection that are also silver. Next to your Kenner Terminator and your Revoltech Ultron. And I think that the Terminator is a little too clean in comparison. I feel like the Terminator should be, if as dirty, if not more dirty, than this guy. But I think the Ultron comparison is okay. I mean, he's obviously a way more complex robot than he is, but, they're presumably made by different people, so you can get it to work, you can kerfuffle it. If it's like a lineup, they work pretty nicely together just because silver is the defining thing here, but, yeah, you could fudge it. And finally, for the classic comparison I always love to do, here it is next to 9 to 5 Warriors and Skeleton Warriors Oracula. That's not his name, by the way. His name's Major Razor. Obviously, Major Razor's going to fit next to any toy, because they are, in fact, toys. So, toy come to life. We've heard this in every single review since 9 to 5 Warriors. But I think next to Oracula, it actually is a really nice comparison. Both the skeletons of Skeleton Warriors in this figure have a great affinity for very impressive paintwork, and through that, they just look really great next to each other. I can definitely see this being a really nice, fun little crossover section. And yeah, go right ahead. I would actually really like to see photographs of these guys together. And now I find myself in the precarious situation of trying to recommend this guy to you, because I love this figure. I really do. It's one of the most gorgeous retro figures I've ever seen. Let alone own. I mean, it stands alongside some of my even like my modern stuff in terms of just how much I love looking at it. The wash is, I can't even state enough. The camera might not even pick it up properly. Just how detailed the wash makes him look. It truly brings this figure to ascension. But, I mean, the engineering problems, that's just really terrible. And I cannot say in the end, if you can't get past that problem, if you aren't prepared to potentially need to fix this figure, I mean, it's only $12 to get, so, I mean, shoot your shot, but I wouldn't blame you for passing. This figure is like, it's an Atlantics out of 10. It's a great movie, but there's one part of it that is really distracting, and it kind of pulls away from the point here. If you watch the movie, you probably know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to explain it. That's your homework. Watch the movie. It's a great movie. It's a film, is what it is. I watched it in a film class. And that's this figure. It's for people who really appreciate the craft. It's for people who really love retro figures. And this is, maybe it almost feels imaginary to them. It doesn't feel like it's limited by the fact that it's a 1995 fucking Galoob figure. But it just has that one glaring problem. And with that, I hope you enjoyed. As a content creator, I guess I've sold my soul, so I must say, leave a like, comment, subscribe, put your the funny numbers in the back of your credit card in the comments section, whatever. I don't care. If you hate me, let me know in the comments. That helps me anyways. And have a good day.